Hey everyone, if you're taking AP US History, I'm John from Marco Learning. I'm joined by Tom Ritchie from Tom Ritchie, the best YouTube channel there is. Tom, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great, John. Just ready for some more APUSH review, and really excited to see all the energy tonight. And let's see what we see in terms of questions that people still had a lot of good discussion. So I'm just it's great to be here on Marco Learning's channel, and also I keep reminding everybody at MarcoLearning.com, free practice tests, free study guides, just a lot of stuff to check out over there. But for the next hour or so, John and I are going to be here, and we are going to be taking questions. So with that, let's go over to the chat and see what's going on here. And so we got about 32 in there, but Darren is first, and you're welcome, Deanna. And y'all go ahead and get the questions. And John, do you have anything to say about Marco Learning while we're here?
Yeah, real quick, Tom. Thank you guys. Everyone, post your questions right there in the Q&A, just as Tom is saying in the chat. We've got a study guide pack that I'm going to link to. I've just linked to in the description for you all. These are one-page cheat sheets. So if you're cramming for the AP US History exam, those are here. And if you're taking the digital exam and you're not as worried about this tonight, I've also linked to our ultimate guide to the digital exams, including links to our videos for all of this. And when you check out our channel on YouTube, you'll be able to see a playlist for AP US History and tons of great resources. So Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to hang out in the chat and answer questions for everyone who's joining. Thank you guys for joining tonight.
All right, excellent. Now, ladies and gentlemen, John's going to be on the chat for right now, and later on, John will be, a little bit more active on camera, and we will probably, I would guess, that you're going to get a look at Marco the dog. Okay, so we want to make sure that y'all get a look at Marco, and so stay around for that. And so we have a few good questions already, and what I've got here, and remember to subscribe to this channel if you're watching. Just hit 16K from the last broadcast. Would love to see it at 16.1 by the time we're done here. Now, one of the questions here, your mom says, we live you, I live you too. So with that, what we're going to ask here is Hassan is asking, can I go over the basic structure on writing the SAQ? And Marcia, I love y'all too. So the SAQ, what I want to note here is in talking to SAQ readers, people don't miss SAQs because they didn't follow a particular format. They tend to miss SAQs because they didn't know it. Okay, they didn't know it, and that's what we're seeing there. And so, basically you want to answer the question. And also the biggest thing here that I have for you as a takeaway is that don't think about them as short answer questions. Think about them as specific answer questions. Okay, so when you think about it as a specific answer question, then that is something that is going to, that is something that is going to encourage you to be a little bit more thorough. That somewhere you need to make a claim and support it with specific evidence. So that's why I like to think of it as a specific answer question. So when you see a question, get in there and answer it as well as you can. But give a piece of specific evidence. So for example here, when we think about what's going on here is, when we're looking at the questions, briefly describe one difference between Native American societies in the Great Plains and Native American societies in the Northeast. The Great Plains, actually, we just got one response here. Okay, so I thought that I had more than that. But with that, the Great Plains, okay, these are different responses. Let me just kind of critique these. Hunter-gatherer societies. Now, note here, doesn't count off for spelling. Okay, I can laugh at this person, like Wright brothers, but at the same time, it's like I'm not taking anything off. The Great Plains hunter-gatherer societies were more nomadic, and they traveled around and hunted buffalo. On the other hand, the Northeast had more established societies and relied more on agriculture. Now, the Native American societies in the Great Plains traveled around, and the Native American societies in the Northeast stayed more in place. This would get credit, okay? So with this, a difference between Native Americans in the Great Plains and the Northeast is how the natives in the Great Plains mostly hunted bison. And again, often lived in teepees made out of buffalo skin. Notice how we've got specifics here. Northeastern natives used agriculture crops to survive, like squash, beans, and corn. Now, how specific do I need to be, Richie? As specific as you can be. Okay. So if you don't know squash, beans, corn, then, you don't know them. But if you do know them, basically don't leave anything here that can go on paper is the biggest thing. So when we're looking at this, we want to make sure that people are, I usually recommend, now, if you can answer it in one sentence, you can answer it in one sentence, but you've got about 4 minutes per question, okay, per minute per, for A, B, C, you've got 12 minutes for the whole thing, but you've got about 4 minutes for each of these. So don't short it. So a similarity. Now, one tip that I have here, when you think about a similarity between Native Americans in the Great Plains and Native Americans in the Northeast, what you want to think about is what is something that would be a similarity for all Native Americans, okay? And that's something to think about. So we think here, both Native Americans settling in the Great Plains and Northeast societies both believed in the preservation and conservation of nature. Now we're looking here that this is something that applies to any of these Native groups. By believing they need to protect the lands, using them to certain extents, such as hunting and gathering, most tribes also practice some form of agriculture. Each geographical group adopt, now this, I would say that's unnecessary, but note, they use something called positive scoring on these exams. You get credit for what you get right. You don't get deducted for something that you did wrong. So with that, each geographical culture group adapted to and interacted with its distinct regional environment. So this is something that is specific. It's right on. This is something here that doesn't necessarily apply to both of them, but then we have something here. So this would get credit, okay? So the reader's going to kind of overlook this and focus on what you said that was correct. The reader's job is to give you as much credit as you possibly earned, okay? So hopefully that gives you a bit of clarity about SAQs. But remember, go into it thinking about not short answer questions, but specific answer questions, okay? Do DBQ topics repeat over the years? That's something that that maybe you'll see something, years and years ago, okay? Like, they'll eventually, you're going to run out of topics, but I've never seen something like this was a topic within the last like 5 years and then it's repeating or something like that. Now, the same time periods can be repeated. So for example, 2018, we saw turn of the century. We saw the turn of the century imperialism. And then in 2019, progressive era. Now, the other thing as well, remember that, when y'all take the exam tomorrow, there are going to be like 2 or 3 forms of the exam circulating. So not everybody's going to write the same DBQ. Not everyone's going to write the same like you're not going to have the same LEQ sets. There are going to be a few different incarnations of the exam tomorrow. So with that, so as far as that, now, Deanna, what we want to note here, and also just note that, John will likely be doing some Instagram shout outs later. So go ahead and make sure you're following @MarcoLearning on Instagram, because John's going to be shouting out later to folks who do that. So I think if y'all are here, hopefully you're already following me on Instagram @TomRitchie, but this is about Marco here. So with that, what do we know about historical thinking? Now, Deanna, the LEQ, no matter how the LEQ prompt is set up, it's your choice whether to use the comparison, causation, or CCOT format. Now, I tend to say the CCOT format is the most complicated, and I have never seen an LEQ prompt that can't be answered with either a causation argument or a comparison-driven argument. So I tend to steer students to one or the other. I don't tend to steer students toward the CCOT because I've never seen where you need CCOT, okay? So that's what I'm seeing there. And so with this, can I talk about the Square, Fair, and New Deals? Okay, so as far as that goes, Square Deal, Teddy Roosevelt. The Square Deal, as I was saying, is about the 3 C's. Okay, so when we look at this, Teddy Roosevelt, Square Deal, we know that Teddy Roosevelt is about conserving natural resources, control of corporations, and consumer protection. Now, if we're thinking about this, then we want to have a piece of specific evidence, okay? So when you're thinking about that, we do know that Teddy Roosevelt set up several national parks, okay? So he did some things to set up national parks, and we see where, he's making it as well. Like, one thing about me is, when people recycle paper, it's like, okay, but I feel like recycling plastic is a lot more important. Now, I'm not a professional or anything like that, but the thing is, because of Teddy Roosevelt, a paper company can't just go in and clear cut the forest and leave it, okay? That any paper company that sells paper in the United States, they cut down the forest, they replant the trees, and they're rotating these forests, okay? So they've got this whole like Georgia Pacific, they've got these forests and they're rotating them. And that is because of Teddy Roosevelt. Now, the thing is, you throw away plastic, that's going in the landfill and that stuff's not going to go away. But the thing is, because of Teddy Roosevelt, we see that, corporations, cannot do what they were doing, where it's like, okay, we cut down that forest, on to the next one. Okay, so conservation. Now, note, Teddy Roosevelt is not like a preservationist as much as a conservationist. Muir or whatever. It's a written test, right? For y'all taking it tomorrow, a type test for everybody else. But he wants to conserve. So he wants to mandate the conservation of forests, for example. And so then control of corporations. This is when we think about Teddy Roosevelt, suing the Northern Securities Commission. So the Northern Securities case. Okay, so basically, this is something where, even though the Sherman Antitrust Act was not the Anti-Truck Act, but the Antitrust Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act may have been a weak law, but at the same time, Teddy Roosevelt brought a case against Northern Securities. Basically, the Great Northern Railroad and the Northern Pacific Railroad decided that they were going to form a trust that was going to have a monopoly on the Northeast, like basically, or not the Northeast, but the Pacific Northwest. And so they got together, and Teddy Roosevelt's like, no, this is not in the public interest. And this is what earns Teddy Roosevelt the, trust buster. Okay, and we think about trust buster here, that is Teddy Roosevelt is a trust buster because of something like this. But then again, Teddy Roosevelt, he doesn't go after corporations like Standard Oil that he saw to be in the public interest. We've got to remember that although somebody can gripe about some of John D. Rockefeller's competitive practices, when we think from a point of view of consumer protection, because of John D. Rockefeller, like before Standard Oil was expensive and it was not good. Okay. Like people were paying a lot for oil and they might light it up and boom, like, all of a sudden, like, bam, like, whoa, that just blew up. And so Standard Oil, the whole reason John D. Rockefeller is calling it Standard Oil is because it meets a standard. Okay. So it meets a standard that is, like this oil's not going to blow up. And then also John D. Rockefeller, who was raised poor, he said, I'm refining oil for the poor man. I want him to have it cheap and good. And so with that, Teddy Roosevelt, he's specifically going after trusts that he sees are not in the public interest. And so again, when we think about this, what is Teddy Roosevelt doing? Now, also consumer protection, you think about things like the Meat Inspection Act and the FDA, the Pure Food and Drug Act, which sets up the Food and Drug Administration that is, regulating for the first time, advertisements for drugs, where, you got this snake oil salesman going around and like it cures what ails you. And so now drugs have to get some kind of FDA approval. And so with that, So for example, like, the vaccines that are being used in the United States right now, they've had to get at least a cursory approval from the FDA. President Biden is sending AstraZeneca vaccines to India right now, partly because that vaccine has not been approved for use in the United States. And so therefore we've got, boxes of it in the United States that we're not able to use because it has not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. Now, the Meat Inspection Act, we want to note about the influence of muckraking. Okay, so the Meat Inspection Act, Sinclair, or not Sinclair, but Upton Sinclair. Okay, he wrote The Jungle, and so Upton Sinclair, he was a socialist. Okay, so Upton Sinclair, that basically, he wanted to, Upton Sinclair was wanting to draw attention to immigrant poverty and some of the problems going on there. As a socialist, those were what he was thinking. But then, people read this book and they're like, oh my Lord, that meat must be nasty if it's going through that. I want my meat to be cleaner. And so what happened is Congress, did an investigation and they said, okay, it looks like the meat is really dirty. And, so they passed the Meat Inspection Act, make sure people's meat is not dirty. And so that is, when you think about muckraking, the jungle is typically going to be like the most visible, muckraking thing. Now, let's not forget, like, kind of the godfather of muckrakers, Jacob Riis, okay, or Jacob Riis, whatever you want to call him, but How the Other Half Lives, okay, Jacob Riis, How the Other Half Lives, which I often call one of the first coffee table books because it's a book, but it also has photography. And y'all can, if you've ever been to New York City, it's still a lot like that today, where there are sections of New York City where it's like, oh, wow, this is like so nice. And then there are other sections of New York City, you're like, am I about to get killed? So the thing is that Jacob Riis is taking like the wealthier people in New York City out of their bubble and taking them to the tenements, okay, the low rent apartments. And he's showing, look at these little orphans, that are sleeping here on the streets, that this is, even though it might be a posed photograph, but it's still like, oh my goodness, like those children, we need to do something about that. So muckrakers are, they are exposing corruption in corporations and in government. And so that's something that we're seeing there. Now, I've gone over the New Deal so much in other broadcasts, and then Truman's Fair Deal, I would not necessarily put too much into Truman's Fair Deal because it just doesn't really tend to come up as much. So that's something to consider with that. So going from there, we'll see, let's see what we've got over here with, our last minute review. And John, do we want to do any shout outs? Does Marco Learning have any new followers on Instagram we want to shout out to?
Yeah, and Tom, I'll pull this up now. Thank you guys, everyone, for joining. If this is helpful to you, definitely press that like button, subscribe. We've got a few new followers I want to shout out from the Instagram page. We've got attempted_photography, Almdrove, Finney Dean, Blue Martini 2323. That's a kind of mysterious name. Reader 310. Definitely check us out. We'll be doing high quality memes that don't reveal content, which is, Tom knows Sophia, who does a lot of our social media memes, and poor thing, she has to like make memes that are vaguely about AP exams without like revealing Trevor Packer's secrets to the world. Remember, everyone, there is a 48-hour moratorium after the exam where you're not allowed to post your own memes, but you can definitely like press the APUSH hashtag on Twitter and Instagram and see them. And then 48 hours later, the College Board is actually going to release those exams to all of you. So, that's an important thing to keep in mind as you're going through, and definitely want to thank you all for joining us for tonight's session. Tom, earlier in the broadcast, I had mentioned, I showed off some of those resources that we have on our channel. Definitely check those out, everyone, and keep posting those questions in the chat. Tom, any final words of wisdom? I'm going to be sending people over to your playlist for AP US History. I've got that in the description. Some people are taking exams in a couple weeks. Any parting words as, our East Coast people need to be going to bed for their exam tomorrow?
Yeah, the thing is, one thing I'm going to note here is this is not the time to learn suddenly to write a DBQ or an LEQ. This is not the time to like teach yourself how to do that. If you don't know, like I wouldn't be looking up videos on complex understanding right now, for example. That's something that ship has sailed. Whatever with the LEQ, with whatever time you have left at this point, if you haven't practiced this many times, it's just go and, figure out what sticks. Make sure you have a thesis, put some outside evidence, write the best essay you can. If you write like a full page and it's relevant on the LEQ, it's going to be very hard for you to get a 0 on that. So the thing is, don't, be staying up all night. The more sleep that you get, you are going to do better on this exam. And so that's something that I think is very important here when we're thinking about that. When you're, it's not the time for some of those things. That I think that it's really time to get in there and just try to get some content. But really, it's about 10 o'clock on the East Coast, and you really need to kind of start thinking about winding down your mind. Now, one thing that I want to note here is Gigi or Gigi. I'm going to say Gigi. But it's a written test, right? And so with this, laissez-faire in the 20s, okay? I'm going to say, remember I've talked about how the Gilded Age, I don't like the characterization of laissez-faire because it's like, look, when you think about the Pacific Railroad Act, a high protective tariff, these things that, breaking up all the strikes, these are things that the government is really, siding with big business. But with that, in the 1920s, I would say that the government is much more on the laissez-faire side, except two things I would note that would be notable exceptions. Two things would be that there was a higher tariff during the 1920s than there had been during the Progressive era. So there's a bit of a higher tariff. And another thing I'd note is that the Federal Reserve, which was created during the Progressive era, it is regulating interest rates and the money supply. So that's another thing to note here that the 20s, while there is, an atmosphere of low taxes and low regulation, you still do have some of these things like the protective tariff and the Federal Reserve that are regulating the economy. So that's, we want to be, it's like, think about not whether it was laissez-faire or not, but to what extent was it laissez-faire? And if we're thinking about, if we want to go back to when the government was, laissez-faire, then, we got to really go back to the Jacksonian era. We've got to go back to before the Civil War. Dante wants to ask, why is the College Board a scam? I don't think that's going to be on the exam, but we're just gonna kind of leave that question out there and let y'all deal with that once the exam season is over. Now, one thing, Adrian, when it comes to Reconstruction, when we're thinking about presidential Reconstruction versus radical Reconstruction or congressional Reconstruction. So radical or congressional Reconstruction, this is something that, when you think about both of those Reconstructions, that these are, they're both trying to improve the lives of Black Americans. Okay, so when you think about, like with Lincoln, presidential Reconstruction, the 13th Amendment, it abolished slavery. That is an improvement. Now, how much of an improvement? What I always ask people is, what did the 13th Amendment do? They say abolish slavery. And then I ask, what else did the 13th Amendment do? And they start guessing, or they sit there and they think, or they guess and they think a little bit. And I'm like, exactly. The 13th Amendment only abolished slavery. It didn't do anything else. And so as far as that goes, that, with presidential Reconstruction, Black Americans are out of slavery, but they don't have citizenship. They don't have land. They're now, instead of slavery, they're working as tenants or sharecroppers on somebody else's land. Now, radical Reconstruction sets about with the 14th and the 15th Amendments, the 14th Amendment guaranteeing birthright citizenship and equal protection of the laws. Remember that Marco Learning provides support for APUS government as well. How many of y'all are taking APUS government next year? Why don't y'all just let me know in the chat, because Marco Learning provides support for that subject too. So with that, we want to, we want to think about, we want to think about that next year. But then the 15th Amendment also is about preventing discrimination based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. And so with that radical Reconstruction is going farther with trying to, grant full citizenship to Black Americans. Now, of course, after the Compromise of 1877, then we're going to see that, Southern white Democrats are going to reassert control. And that's going to, that's going to be something that's going to be a big, is going to be a big change there. So with that, we see here that, yes, some of y'all are taking Gov next year. So y'all make sure y'all are subscribed to this channel. Okay. So Marco Learning, have we gotten it to 16.1? I feel like that'd be an accomplishment, 16K subscribers. I'd love to see 16.1K. Okay. So if y'all can help my feelings, just if you find this helpful, hit that subscribe button. And I think that's going to be a great little move for you there. And so with that, now the exam is always curved. They do not know what the scores are going to be on the exam until they look at how people do. So every year there's a committee that gets together and they cut the scores. They decide what's going to be a 2, what's going to be a 3, what's going to be a 4, what's going to be a 5. So with that, that's something there. The gold standard and bimetallism. Now, one thing, Sydney, that the gold standard has the advantage of regulating the money supply and curbing inflation. Okay, so basically, if you've got gold, unless somebody just strikes gold, unless Marco the dog is digging in the backyard and all of a sudden, like, he finds just El Dorado and all these gold reserves, gold tends to hold value. And so, basically the gold standard provides protection against inflation, but it also puts an arbitrary limit on the money supply. Whereas bimetallism, which is what the populists were advocating for, it brings in more money. This is before the Federal Reserve. And so our money was based on metals. And so it brings in more money. But at the same time, when you bring in more money, you also risk inflation. And so that is something that is, that is a big deal. That is a big deal there. So that would be basically when you're thinking about, the gold standard versus bimetallism. Advocates of the gold standard, they believe that this is sound money, whereas advocates of bimetallism, they are, they're thinking like, look, we need more money circulating. And so it ends up that the gold standard wins, at least for that time. So going from that, let's see. So generic, I think you're going to do better than you think. You're going to do better than you think. What funny word or phrase should I incorporate into my DBQ? Dante, I've suggested PogChamp. If you said like, hey, during the American Revolution, George Washington showed up like a PogChamp. I'm just, when people are asking me that, this is a little bit different, this year, because there are 3 exam administrations. It's just, we're recovering from the pandemic, all of that, that I think that I'm going to go back to promoting that kind of stuff full force next year. But as far as that goes, and people are asking me, I'm like, PogChamp, and then just cross it out. If you want to have a little bit of fun, or just put it in there, like, the Alien and Sedition Acts were passed, but then Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, pog into the chat, and they, with the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. So all of that, yes, good luck, everyone. That is very important there. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to end my part in this and yield to John. Now, y'all remember, subscribe to Marco Learning, follow Marco Learning on, on Instagram. They've got a lot of great memes. The memes tomorrow alone will be a great reason to follow. And stay tuned. Know that John has been doing test prep for years and years and years. So yeah, he's getting Marco the dog. So ladies and gentlemen, best of luck to y'all tomorrow. And just know, there are people who pay John a ridiculous amount of money to prepare them for tests. So yeah, and then we got Marco. Hey, Marco.
Marcos, he just had to go down, but he wanted to give a little quick blessing to everybody before they go. Thank you so much, Tom Ritchie. Everyone, definitely check out Tom's channel for all of your test prep needs, especially for AP US, AP Euro, and Gov. Real quick, everyone, I want to walk you through a couple of resources that we can leave you with in the coming days, in the coming hours. Some of you have more time than others. I want to remind you, we've got a free study guide pack for AP US History. Here's what it looks like. If you are on the West Coast and you've got plenty of time, you can take all of period 3, all of unit 3, and look at it kind of at once. It's not everything, but it's a really good kind of one-page cheat sheet. And I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to post this actually in the chat for all of you so that you have it. This is our study guides pack for AP US History. Go ahead and download this and you can walk away. Somebody earlier was saying like, hey, can you help me with unit 5? Yes, right? That covers this period. Here are some of the high level key concepts. That's how they used to organize the course. Here's a picture of manifest destiny. Here's a quick timeline and some key terms. What is manifest destiny? It's right there. So this is, Margot is the PogChamp, indeed. And just, yeah, let's give a quick shout out to Tom Ritchie for all the incredible stuff he has done. He's posted on his channel for years for AP US, AP Euro, AP Gov. I'm gonna put a little emoji here in the chat for Tom that is just a, one of these corny things. So anyway, these sheets are available for you. If you have more time, remember we've got full-length practice tests for AP US with explanations. We also have them for Lang and Lit. So if you're taking the AP English Lang exam, check this out. It's a free practice test. And if you're taking a digital exam, we've got our ultimate guide to the digital AP exams, which I'm just going to drop into the chat real quick. And let's see, I'll put this right here. And one second. Sorry, yes, that is the ultimate, the guide to digital AP exams. It's got a video where I break down how to study for digital tests. As Tom was saying, I worked in test prep for 19 years. I filmed videos for the Princeton Review. I've helped people with the digital exams. This is a really special way of going through the test that we can help you. So the other thing I want to show to you real quick is Tom has done a unit review 1 for us, and we have a bunch of videos that are super short, a lot of 4-minute, 12-minute videos. Check this out on our channel, Study Sessions with Tom, breakdowns of everything up until the 20th century, including even a DBQ rubric walkthrough that we've got on this channel. So definitely check out all of those resources. If you don't subscribe to our channel, do that. We're going to be going live all through the summer for college admissions, other resources, and we want to help you as much as we can. So thank you all. Definitely reach out to us on social media, post on this video if you're watching the recording of it, and check out those free resources that we've posted in the description. Thank you, everyone.